Welcome to a football show, Christmas, post-Christmas Day edition. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. I am Braden Gall, and I've got a large glass of tea after finishing my Shotgun Willie's barbecue cold turkey sandwich for like the 13th time since Thanksgiving. No, different round of cooking. Wasn't the same exact turkey. That would be weird. Also brought to you, of course, by Sinkers Beverages. I am a little under the weather with the crud from all the kids that have been in the house the last few days. Nick, how are you? Merry Christmas.
I am along the weather. What is the opposite? I guess above the weather, along the weather, below. I'm along the weather.
Parallel?
Okay. Parallel to the weather. Yeah, I'm doing okay.
You're not going to explain where what you did for Christmas and where you were?
I'm happy to. I would
love to hear it.
I was in unincorporated land on a farm somewhere in Mississippi that I don't believe the government can find at the in-laws' house, farm, whatever you want to call it. There were horses wearing jackets. There were dogs and pigs running around and chickens and whatnot. Amazing. I won the family darts tournament. Just a solid evening.
We're gonna have to have a 440 darts competition.
I am much better at foosball than I am darts, but I can hold my own at darts.
I feel like being great at foosball is not a tremendously awesome skill.
No. Like it is a very lame brag, but I do technically have a transitive win over a foosball world champion.
Oh, very cool. So like A plus B does equal C in your world.
Yeah, transitive wins matter when it comes to me specifically.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Agree. All right. Sinkers Beverages, of course, for all your liquor store needs. 4-time liquor store of the year in Nashville, Tennessee. And Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Again, I got the hat on, the merch. You're going to need to get out of the house or off the farm, I guess, as it were. And so make sure you head to get some great brisket and some really good food this weekend. They're open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Make sure you go check them out. So there you go. JT already in the comment section saying you would dominate the darts competition. JT is what you're saying. Okay, we shall see.
I've heard him talk about this before. He likes darts.
Well, he doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a family. He doesn't have a significant other. What does he do all day?
What and we're 2.5 minutes in, and this is a JT roast.
There you go. By the way, almost all farms in Mississippi cannot be found by the government. That's just part of the joy of living there.
And also, not to spoil what we're about to talk about, but I was on a farm where the TV said it does not support live streaming. So you're going to have to tell me a lot of what happened yesterday in the National Football League.
What is this, Ed? Let me make sure I'm reading this right. Do family trees fork down there, Nick?
I think that is a Mississippi, Alabama kind of joke that we don't have to explain. I think a lot of the listeners might know what Ed is referring to. I am not from Mississippi. I merely lived there for 5 years. I am from Georgia, a place that is almost different. So we're all from the South, right? We're all Southern.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part. I'm from Wisconsin originally, but sure.
Yeah, let's call you a Southerner.
I've been
south Tennessee.
I have been south of the Mason-Dixon line for 36 of my 42 years. So.
Yeah, no, I think you can own Southern.
Yeah. I went to high school here. I went to college here. My kids were born here. As Drew Holcomb would say, I was born here and raised here, and I'll make my grave here. So, all right. Okay. So here's the deal. Lots of fun stuff on Christmas. We'll get to that. Obviously, we got to talk about the quarterback situation. Geek Corner just exploded over this last couple of days with Mason Rudolph-Will Levis comparisons. There's been some dueling reporting in the Titans media corps about quarterbacks in the draft, not the least of which is tied probably directly to the statistical parallels between Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. Obviously, you guys are going to talk to the coordinators today, so I want to know what you expect to hear out of Denard Wilson, which unfortunately, as PK said on Monday, kind of a bummer that you got to ask him about the worst performance of his career the day after Christmas, but it kind of is what it is, and I just want to hear what you have to say about what you expect to hear, because all the players had a lot of interesting comments about, look, like there's the Mo Alley Cox quote from the Colts. There's players saying, in post game after the Colts game, look, we needed to make adjustments. We didn't make adjustments. Why didn't you make adjustments? Follow up question. I don't know. Talk to the coaching staff. There's some weird stuff going on. You got Simmons talking about, if you want to tank, get me out of here kind of stuff. So lots of stuff going on throughout the course of the last few days.
Yeah.
Obviously not And you and I like to talk college football. The Georgia Bulldogs have a new starting quarterback officially. We knew this was probably going to happen, but Carson Beck undergoes surgery to repair the elbow. Elbows, if you watch the game in the SEC championship game, elbows are not supposed to bend that way when you throw a football. So no surprise. Unfortunate. Maybe the Titans can get Carson Beck in the third round. Who knows? So there you go. Lots of stuff to do today on the show. Otherwise, make sure you check out Sinker's Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So here's my Christmas take. Here's my top 3 storylines from Christmas for Titans for football people. Number 1, Netflix is going to take over the live streaming game at some point. It didn't really work for the Paul Tyson fight, but it was the picture quality yesterday, the production value on the Beyonce concert, the money they have, the largest subscription service in the world right now. Netflix is going to take over this stuff. Amazon's been doing a very good job. You got a few others that YouTube is probably going to be a part of this. Google's probably going to be a part of this at some point. But I thought the picture quality, the score bug, like the production value, the sets, like it was way too promotional for me, Nick. It was just Netflix promoting all their other stuff, that's what television networks.
Yeah.
But I think Netflix has a chance to take this over very soon if they want to. That's why every one of these streaming platforms is pushing into live TV. So I thought it was a very good production, very good broadcast. I mean, the Beyonce halftime show was better than most Super Bowl halftime shows, I gotta say.
I believe you. Didn't see it.
Good take.
I believe you.
Everything was better than the Ravens Texans game.
Yeah, it's like, when did the NFL first start with live streams on Thursday night? I know 2016 was the year that Twitter got it. Did Amazon have it before that or after that?
No. I think this is like the 4th year maybe for Amazon, maybe 5th year. I mean, I could double check that. Make your point, sir.
So, I mean, this is not new. It's kind of like the conversation people will have of like Samsung phones come up with all the new stuff, and then 5 years later, once all the bugs are out, Apple comes in and says, we have it now too, and it's perfect. It feels like Netflix waited for the right time to break into the NFL. And I mean, they spent $150 million for 2 football games.
That's a lot of money.
If you have that kind of money to throw around, I get that it's going to look good. And Amazon also has unlimited money. So like production value for production value, it's going to be fine. But like YouTube TV is a streaming service, and the NFL is already on YouTube TV. That is where you find Sunday Ticket. So I am not surprised that the league is moving away from linear cable, linear satellite, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know. I think there is always going to be some form of over the broadcast airwaves NFL action. Like, they're not just going to completely get rid of their CBS and Fox and ESPN deals, but they'll have partnerships like this forever.
So I want to say last year was the first year that it says in March. In March of 21, Amazon acquired rights to become the exclusive broadcaster of Thursday Night Football, starting with the 2023 season and running through 2033, paying approximately $1 billion per year. That's just Wikipedia. That doesn't seem right.
So I think that the word exclusive is carrying there, because it used to be simulcast on NFL Network.
That's what I was guessing too. So here's the thing. Amazon, they were shooting for a record. And look, this is nerdy media stuff here, so just go with us on this journey before we get to like the 14th time we discuss Will Levis and Mason Rudolph this season. So their record-breaking TV ratings number for Amazon was 16 million viewers this year. I think it was a Giants-Cowboys game, like early in the year. They were trying to break that on Black Friday, turning Black Friday into a pro football day instead of a college football day. They only got to about 13 million people. Those numbers are way down, like relative to like what a high-level NFL football game gets on a Sunday. But I do think you're right that the money around Amazon and around Netflix is why and then I would guess Alphabet / Google / YouTube or whatever is going to be the 3 big ones. Obviously, Disney Plus is probably the 4th one. We were actually talking about that. My brother and I were talking about that. Like, where's the consolidation coming from? Look, the game, a couple other notes on the game itself. Derrick Henry, I think he's at like 1780 and some change in yards. Had another big day against the Texans. And if he goes for a really big number in the final week of the regular season, which doesn't seem likely, but if he gets 220, 230, he could be the first player to get to 2,000 yard seasons, which would be pretty remarkable the first year after leaving the Titans. But obviously, I think the bigger takeaway is just how awful the Texans have looked. And I'm not going to say that the Titans killed the Texans a couple of weeks ago. They're certainly going to play in the final week of the regular season, but I mean, the offense looks unimaginative. CJ Stroud is sort of not handling pressure very well. I think Baltimore is playing great football, but like, I don't know. Like they're locked into the 4 seed now, but the Texans are not looking like a team that I expected to see this year going into the playoffs. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the first person to say this. Wholly not an original take, but like the Texans' entire game plan is built around CJ Stroud needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I get that injuries have affected this season, and the receiving core was supposed to be the super deep thing, and it's been kind of taken down a couple of pegs, and the defense hasn't exactly been what it was last year. And I get all of this, but like fundamentally, if CJ Stroud makes any mistakes, this team falls apart. And he's a really good quarterback. I'm not the guy who's out on him. I know there are a lot of people who are like, oh, it was a mirage.
I'm not either.
But like, look, asking any quarterback to be perfect short of like 2011 Aaron Rodgers, like we haven't seen perfection in the NFL in a very, very long time. I guess you could probably argue 2016 Brady, that year he was suspended the first 4 games and then just was unstoppable the rest of the year. Like that's what perfection looks like. And that's once every 5 years, once every 10 years kind of performance. A team can't be built around that.
By the way, a correction, 2017 was the first season Amazon simulcast the broadcast. No, I agree. And I think there's a sophomore slump. You know, people are going to get tape on you, whether it's Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, or Stroud. But man, they were cooking in the beginning of the season, and it seems like things have just slowed down. And some of it's Stroud not managing things well. But again, asking a guy to be perfect for all 17 games is unlikely. Ed says, are the announcers now independent where they can work for television networks and streaming services? I think that depends on person by person. Like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, for example, are not. They are exclusively on Monday nights. I thought, you know, as Laura Rutledge, I think it was hosting the show, sort of the pregame show for Netflix, going in on site for the Steelers. She's obviously an ESPN employee. Herb Street is obviously an ESPN employee and an Amazon employee. So there's people that you just sort of like allow the deals to happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, every Sunday morning, NFL Network pregame has Pat McAfee do a hit. And Disney is obviously paying Pat McAfee all the money in the world. Yep. So they have contracts. They are independent contractors. They can move about.
Yep. Kind of like most of the people on the 440 Sports Network. it's just sort of how it works. We're all in the collaborative world now. It's the collaborative space, Nick. There you go.
But to put a bow on that Stroud conversation with that comment we just got there, no, it would still be very good to have CJ Stroud on your team.
Yeah, I know. Did we dodge a bullet there that the Titans couldn't trade up with the Cardinals for Stroud? No, I disagree. Now, what they paid to go up and get him, the Titans in that situation, I have no idea who could have done that. But no, I think we'd be having a very different conversation about the Tennessee Titans with CJ Stroud. Yes, Team Ramrod 27. He was joking. All right, so let me. I want to get the draft and the Jags game stuff out of the way first here before we get into the quarterback and geek corner stuff, because I'm seeing a lot of mock draft stuff, and I'm not saying that because it's worth anything. I'm just saying it because it's sort of prevailing conversation and sort of internet wisdom, I guess, for whatever that's worth. And there's a lot of conversation around Cam Ward going number 1. There's a lot of conversation, and I know Buck and Tehran both had some like dueling reports, which actually I don't think they're that contradictory if you think about it. That the Titan Buck basically, I don't have it in front of me, but Buck basically saying the Titans are not interested in drafting a quarterback, and Tehran saying they're really interested in Shedeur Sanders if that's an option, but otherwise they're not interested. So again, seems sort of like the same thing. Sanders could drop to 3, maybe at most, but I think that's probably the best case scenario if you're a Titans fan, which makes this game against Jacksonville pretty important, because right now I think they're slotted 3 and 4, Jacksonville 3, Titans 4. Yeah. Which is where we get the losing conversation that's being asked of some of the players, or just in general talked about in Titan circles. Where are you if you are, we all sort of know that the tanking thing isn't like real. We all sort of know that players have to fight as hard as they can to get contracts, to put good tape out there. We know that the front office for the Titans is, if they were to lose 2 games, could be under heavy scrutiny this offseason. Callahan's probably safe, but there's a really fine line there between going to get Shedeur Sanders with 2 games left, or giving yourself a chance, or, maybe not being good enough to keep your job. And I'm not saying they should make changes, but where are you on that dynamic inside the building right now?
Look, we talked about this a month ago, and I will bring it back up now. But the 2 rebuilds that get brought up the most when talking about this Titans rebuild are what Detroit did and what San Francisco did. We can talk about Cincinnati. That's kind of like a third one, but Detroit and San Francisco are the two big ones. And the Titans are heading into a year that on the Detroit timeline and on the San Francisco timeline, both of those teams had 10 to 12 draft picks that next year to reinvigorate the roster. And if we are people who believe that is the plan, and that tracks with the DeAndre Hopkins trade, that tracks with the Ernest Jones trade, that tracks with a lot of what the Titans have done in the last few months, then picking the quarterback in round one, even if he's available, kind of diverges from what the stated plan is. If there is a quarterback on the board who people are willing to trade up for, and the Titans do not trade up for him, that quarterback better be Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying that Shedeur Sanders can't be Joe Burrow. I saw people making earnest comparisons between the two of them this weekend, and I understand the framework of that discussion. I don't necessarily agree yet. I am not sold yet, but I understand that conversation.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, if there is somebody who's willing to give you multiple first-round picks and multiple day 2 draft picks over 3 years to move up from 6 to 3 or to move up from 12 to 3 or whatever it takes to get a quarterback, that to me is the better philosophy. And that's not talking about individual prospects. I don't care if it's Shedeur. I don't care if it's Cam Ward, whichever quarterback you fall in love with, Jalen Miller or Carson Beck, whoever it ends up being. I am generally a believer in I believe it was Bill Parcells' philosophy of you always draft the quarterback last. You have your roster, go get the quarterback, plug him in, win. I don't think the Titans are at a last position right now. I don't think they're a quarterback away. And while they are not a quarterback away, if people are asking my opinion, I would say don't draft a quarterback this year. But if you want to do what Cincinnati did, Cincinnati's rebuild was entirely rooted in they got Joe Burrow. Yeah. So if you think this guy can be Joe Burrow, try it.
Look, I think Cam Ward being rumored to be ahead of Shedeur is good news for the Titans. I think that's a very good thing to happen. I don't know if that's real. I don't know if that we're so far away that it's impossible to know what's real or what's not. The fact that we have 2 local reporters who are very good with any sort of insight from, quote, very high-ranking officials on this type of thing could also, like, it's must-lie season when you talk about drafting players and how teams are evaluating players. I think you're right to look at it philosophically, and we've said it all along. Make the team better today, no matter who's going to be playing quarterback.
Yeah.
And that way, whenever you get the quarterback, they step into a much better situation. The issue with that is that if they continue to lose and you do get a bunch of picks, like you're saying, you've got a front office that has to be considering the fact that they might not be around to make all those picks they just went and got.
Yes.
And that's a pretty tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and that's scary. But that is also definitionally the trust the process concept. And like the most famous trust the process example ever didn't get to finish the process. Like the 76ers that kind of invented this entire mindset got fired for it. Like we understand that doing the right thing in a front office risks losing your job. But if they are making decisions based on the long-term strength and long-term viability of the Tennessee Titans versus the short-term viability of I do not want to be fired. Yeah, if you don't want to be fired, marry yourself to a quarterback, because then who's going to take the job? Because they're going to be married to your quarterback if it didn't work. But like, if you want the organization to actually be something, and you've pointed to these 2 very specific examples for 2 years now, you kind of have to follow the blueprint.
I tend to agree with you. I do think Sanders is better than the other ones. So is he Joe Burrow? Is he Joe Burrow? I don't know. But I do think Sanders is better than the other ones. And I do think he has the 2 things that Brian Callahan covets the most, which is processing and accuracy. Yes. I think he's got those 2 things. I don't think Cam Ward has that, and I don't think the rest of the possible draft picks have that. We shall see. We shall see. I think it's interesting, though, that you're already starting to see some of this stuff floating around, meaning like not just like internet rumors, but like folks who are on the beat doing work saying, look, I think this is where I'm feeling. After talking to some folks, this is how I feel. Like, I think it's interesting that we're starting to see some of that. When it comes to the Jacksonville game, is there any actual, like, what's the redeeming quality that you're looking for in the game itself?
I have been trying to figure that out, and that's what I've been asking players this week. I don't know. It's one of those strange games where even the last couple of weeks when the Titans have been eliminated but continuing to play, they've been playing against teams that aren't eliminated yet. So the intrigue has been, at least, can you play spoiler? This game, unless you care about the draft, there really isn't far-reaching implications. But I do find it pretty interesting to watch. Does this manifest itself with guys playing angrier, or does this manifest itself with guys playing less angry? Because the angerometer, to reference myself again, is what I'm going to be fascinated in. Because are guys playing like, this sucks, or are guys playing like, I am mad that this sucks? Like, that's kind of what I want to see. Because if I had to play in a 3-12 versus 3-12 football game, I would lose all of my bones from getting hurt. But I would also be like, what are we doing here? Like, this doesn't actually affect anything.
Two follow-ups. One, combined 6 and 24, still not the worst.
I don't believe so. I can double check that. I've got it written down somewhere over here.
I think it was 2 and 12, 2 and 12, right? I think it was 4 and 24.
I believe that was, yeah.
Or maybe even worse than that, 2 and 14, maybe, or close to. The other thing is, what's the general sense you get from the players by asking that question? How many do you feel are tipping towards motivationally angry versus quitting and giving up is not the word I mean at all, but just like human element of this situation, right? That would anyone in there, it would be understandable for anyone in this situation to be like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is there aren't that many people on this team with guaranteed money. Yeah. So the motivation is pretty obvious of you have to play for that next contract. And I get that. That's motivation enough. But yeah, 2 and 12 versus 2 and 12, still the worst. Yikes.
Brutal. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, real Texas barbecue, as it says right there on my hat. Fantastic merch and a great way to get out of the house this weekend. Go get yourself some really delicious brisket right there in Madison, right off Bradley Parkway, 11 to 3 every single Wednesday through Sunday. Go check them out. Sinkers Beverages, right there, that little logo. If you're watching on YouTube above Nick's head, it says Sinkers Beverages right there. They've been serving the community for almost 40 years, 4 straight Liquor Store of the Year championships in Tennessee, or in Middle Tennessee and Nashville. So voted on by you, the users. 2 fantastic, great local businesses. So make sure you go check out Sinkers Beverages for all of your beverage needs. And if you're watching on YouTube where you see that logo right over Nick's head, please hit the notification button and go ahead and share the product as well. If you want to jump into the comment section, we've got plenty of you guys over there already, Ed and Kenneth, and I guess this JT guy who's here as well. All right, so let's talk about these quarterbacks. How absurd, like, let's go full on geek corner here before we get to the college football playoff. And I just like, there we go. It's not as festive this week, though.
It's just the old, I have one sign. I have not updated it in 2 months.
Okay. Well, you made a whole new sign.
I did last week, and it's somewhere.
Is it on the? Is it? It's downstairs in the road studio.
Yeah. It's over by the Christmas tree.
Oh, how long do you guys keep the Christmas tree up? By the way, when does it come down?
I think it'll probably come down when I get back from Jacksonville.
Okay,
would be my guess.
Oh, mine normally comes down the day after. She gets so tired of it, but she didn't decorate as much this year, which I loved. And so therefore the tree might stay up longer, which I'm okay with, actually. I'm okay with that. Okay. So Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. Average to below average, throwing lots of interceptions on short passes. But basically they're the same?
Yeah, productively, yes. I looked this up. The odds of a quarterback having their exact stat line in the history of the National Football League, which means they have the exact same yards per attempt and the exact same passer rating. Did you see that I posted this? Do you know where this is going?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
I'm setting you up, Nick.
I don't talk to people. I just throw things out in the ether. And if people see them, that's up to them. Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen, there's only one other player in NFL history who has finished a season with the exact same passer rating and the exact same completion percentage, yards per attempt, whatever it is, that Levis and Rudolph both have right now. And it was 2018 Blake Bortles. The Titans are double Bortlesing this season.
Bortles.
It has been a little bit rough. And look, if you look at QBR as a stat, which is very loaded, and I know people have a lot of very complicated opinions about the value of QBR, but since it is weighted for game time significance and clutch and all of that stuff, Rudolph has been significantly better by that weighted metric than Levis has. And if you look at things like adjusted net yardage per attempt, which factor in sacks and that sort of stuff, Rudolph has been more productive. Like, Levis is docked statistically when you look at things that factor in what time of game, what time of game these things are happening, situationally, how much it hurts the team when you make mistakes, and just generally pocket presence. But if you were looking at the raw stats that essentially only boil down to how you use your arm, they have been productively and essentially equal.
Like historically equal.
Yeah, like remarkably equal.
What's funny is I thought for a second, my first instinct when you said Blake Bortles 2018, I was like, that was not the AFC Championship game run, was it? And then I quickly, it was 2017, of course, that they went to the AFC Championship game with Blake Bortles. That's right. The Jacksonville Jaguars played. How about this for a stat? The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans played in 2 of the 3 AFC Championship games in 2017 to 2019. That's just insane to think about. Ed said,
"Go ahead, finish this thought, and then I'll."
Well, I was going to go to Ed. So if you want to go ahead and finish,
I was going to say that in the run between 1999, 98 or 99, and 2021, I want to say 2022, either the Titans or Jaguars made the playoffs all but 5 seasons. Like, for as much as we dunk on these franchises, I did a long newsletter about this, and not to repeat myself if you guys read it, but the entire reason the Titans-Jaguars rivalry is the joke that it is the advent of Thursday Night Football. The requirement for every team to play a Thursday Night Football game began at the exact time that the Titans and Jaguars took a mutual dip. In the 20 years before that, either the Titans or Jaguars were almost always good one at a time. And in the 5 years since, when Thursday Night Football has stopped being pushed as every team, every primetime, either the Titans or Jaguars, up until this year, have usually been pretty good. But there was a 4-year period there where both teams sucked. And that was the 4-year period when Thursday Night Football expanded. And so Thursday Night Football kept burying these games because everybody was required, and these were the 2 worst teams, and they didn't want to showcase them. And so it became a meme specifically because of that. And it is unfair to the Titans and Jaguars rivalry, which in the 20 years, 22 years, whatever it is, that the AFC South has existed, there have only been 4 times that these 2 teams have played in December, with both of them having losing records. And 2 of them were this year. It's either 4 or 5 times, and 2 of them were this season.
Yeah, it's
so
crazy.
Like the joke that is the Titans-Jaguars rivalry riles me up a little bit, because it's like it is purely a fabrication of the NFL's own hubris that they made teams play in primetime. And when people started noticing that was happening, just happened to be the era that this was the worst rivalry in the NFL. Historically, it is mediocre. Dating back to 1999, the Titans and Jaguars have played the same number of games where both teams were below average as the Packers and Bears. Wow. And that's the marquee rivalry in the NFL.
Which would be exclusively because when the Packers are bad, they play that game under 500.
Correct.
Just to point that out. The
point remains.
Of course. And the Titans only go to Super Bowls when they have to go through 1-seeded AFC South Division champion Jacksonville Jaguars 3 times. Central, yeah. 3 times in a single season, of course, famously. So there you go. Ed says, could that stat be indicative of the offense telegraphing certain types of plays? That's a hard one to answer, Ed.
I've been thinking about this. I don't think that's the case, because I don't necessarily think that the turnovers specifically for both Rudolph and for Levis are entirely scheme related. When you have balls bouncing off of people's hands, and when you have heaves at the ends of games, and you have
the right tackle giving up absurd pressure,
and you have whatever we want to call what was happening in the Bears game and the Jets game early in the year, there were some that seemed to be somewhat scheme related, like the pick 6 against the Packers. I could see that being scheme related on a slant route that the Packers knew what was coming, and the route might not have been run whatever it is. I could see that, but for the most part, I think players play football. And you've heard me say it on this podcast before. I am a believer in the idea that there are probably only 3 or 4 coaches in the NFL who actually make a significant difference on game day. I think that during the week, it matters to have really great coaching. I think on game day itself, the players have to be the ones to go out and do things. And that is not to completely exonerate coaches from making mistakes, but that is to say that if you ask me, 9 times out of 10, I am going to say players deserve credit for wins and players deserve blame for losses.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. I tend to agree. The higher up you get in any athletic endeavor, the more it is tied to the athlete and less to the coaching. Like you're talking about G5, like MTSU Conference USA football, I think a coach could have a huge impact. I mean, this is why I think Belichick could be successful at North Carolina, because he's going down so far in terms of quality of coaching he's going up against. It's why a coach can have a huge impact at high school and then G5, and then the impact gets less in the SEC, and then it's less in the NFL. It is what it is.
But the example I always give is I played 4A high school football in Georgia. It was not big time stuff. And I every year won the hard work award off the field. And every year my coach would give this big grand speech about hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard enough. And I won the hard work award. So therefore I was working the hardest. And I wasn't that good, and I very rarely played. Talent still is the thing that matters.
Yeah. High school football in Georgia is no joke, though. Don't undersell being the hardest working player on a 4A Georgia.
No, that was a not so subtle brag. I really worked hard, and now I have a full-time job, and who cares?
I mean, if we're gonna do like not so subtle bragging, like our team in Nashville was a 4A playoff team my sophomore and junior year, and we were the only team in the state that moved up to 5A my senior year and still made the playoffs.
Wow.
How about that?
If we want to name some dudes that some Vols fans might remember.
And I did play. Actually.
My senior year, my season was ended by very, very short-lived Vol for life Quenshawn Watson. You remember him?
Oh, wow, that's a deep cut.
He was a running back. We had a lead with 5 minutes left with like 2 minutes left in a playoff game, because I made a game-winning block and felt very good about it. And then Quenshawn took a screen 87 yards in the final minute to beat us. It
sort of sounds like a Tennessee-Georgia football game from around that same time when I was in high school and college. It sounds like a hobnail boot kind of game is what it sounds like.
A little bit, yeah.
All right, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great local and amazing sponsors. Like, do you have? So I know you said only one other player in the history of the NFL has finished with the same sort of 2 or 3 main statistics that these two have. Like, do you actually have? I mean, in order to find out the actual probability though of this happening, don't you have to sort of figure out the entire total universe of quarterback seasons? Like how many quarterback seasons have been played in the history of the league? Is that what you're saying? Like, wouldn't that be the way we'd have to figure out the actual probability, like 0.00001% chance that they finish with the exact same numbers?
Yeah, this is a blue whale and a bowl of petunias situation. If anybody gets that reference, this is infinite improbability.
I do not. Okay. All right.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh,
it's a very, very good book. But yeah, this is infinite improbability. There is virtually no probability of 2 players on the same team posting a stat line that is identical to each other, let alone a stat line that is identical to nobody else or to just one other person. Like, obviously passing statistics in the NFL have become very different. Their passer rating is 63.2, somewhere around there. If you can double check that for me.
Hold.
Okay.
Oh, wait. So passer rating.
Sorry, completion percentage.
Okay, yeah. 63.7 for Levis, 63.8 for Rudolph. So if that blows up your entire thing. They're both 79.8 exactly.
Yeah, so the ability to have a passer rating of 79.8 with a completion percentage above 60% is wholly a modern invention of the modern NFL. If you look at the history of completion percentage in the NFL, I think I've talked about this on the show before, the top 50 players all time in completion percentage, only 2 of them did not play a game after the year 2000.
Yeah.
Joe Montana and Steve Young are the only ones. Everybody else is a last 25 years product. And that kind of shows that really we only have a 20-year sample. To have a completion percentage that high and a passer rating that low really could only exist in the modern NFL. So it's not 106 years of the NFL or whatever the number is. It's really the sample can only exist in an era where completion percentages are high enough, but yards per attempt can be low enough because you're not airing the ball out as much, or you're not, whatever it ends up being. But the probability is still very, very low.
Well, and just to make sure everybody's clear, 79.8 quarterback rating, 6.7 identical yards per attempt, 10.6 identical yards per completion, and basically an identical completion percentage of 63.7 or 8%. And again, the touchdown interception ratio is 1 to 1. So,
but
exactly.
Segue to double geek corner for a second. This will only take like
double
2 seconds.
No, unprecedented double geek corner.
I wrote a story this week that I encourage you guys to go find on Tennessean.com, because Brad Callahan said something Monday that is just functionally, objectively true. He said, look, it's the turnovers. That's what it is. It's the turnovers. And he's right. Like, the Titans are where they are because of the turnovers. And the good news, if you want to look at the silver lining, in the last 10 full seasons, so that means 2013 to 2022, there have been 20 teams that turned the ball over at least 32 times in a season, which means more than twice a game, which is also, or 2+ times a game, which is what the Titans are at right now. I believe 19 of those 20 teams turned the ball over fewer times the next year, with, I believe, 17 of those 20 turning it over 10 or more fewer times the next year. Like, turnover luck in the NFL is historically something that is remarkably flexible. But here's the bad news. 18 of those 20 teams achieved that the next year by either having a new head coach, a new quarterback, or both. So when turnover luck turns around in the NFL, if you have a season that is this bad turnover-wise, something is changing. The only 2 exceptions to the rule were an Eli Manning, Tom Coughlin team late in Eli's tenure that were just like, I don't know. And then I believe both of them were out within the next 2 years. Yep. And then Josh Allen's rookie year of, like, he couldn't stop turning the ball over, but they gave him a second chance because they saw the talent. Other than that, every team either comes with a new quarterback or a new coach. I think the Titans, everybody expects the new quarterback, whether that is fill in the name with player A or B or C or D or E, whatever it is. The turnover luck is going to be different next year. It is the only team that had 32+ turnovers, and then the next year had more turnovers, was the Jameis Winston 30-30 team.
Oh, I love that.
So, like, let's be honest. Unless the
This is the day that the Lord hath made.
Yeah, unless the Titans go sign Jameis Winston,
which is not out of the realm of possibility.
It is statistically likely that the turnovers will not be as big of a problem next year, because turnover luck is more random than we think it is. But in order to achieve that infinite improbability we were talking about, a change is going to have to be made somewhere.
Yeah. Send Levis to Canada. There you go, from Blockbuster. Blockbuster, also a product that came up when talking about Netflix's streaming domination.
Yes.
Like, man, also, you could have just started mailing those videos to people and you would have had an entire subscriber base.
Yeah.
Man.
And maybe one of the worst Netflix original series, that Blockbuster show. Not very good.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, so I was just looking at this because I wanted to see. Titans obviously first in the NFL in interceptions with 20, tied with Cleveland, but they have 20 touchdowns. And I thought, man, 20 touchdowns, because that's obviously I'm looking at Levis and Rudolph comparing the stats and just looking at 2020 going, that's so bad. I am actually shocked that the Titans are tied for 13th in touchdown passes, that there are like almost 20 teams with fewer touchdown passes than the Tennessee Titans. Seems insane to me. But then I'm looking at the efficiency metrics to sort of compare that. And number one, Lamar yesterday and the Ravens, like 39 touchdown passes as a team, 4 interceptions. That's absurd. Then you look at these other units, and how about this is another shout out to Caleb Williams, 5 total interceptions the entire season. by a rookie quarterback is also sort of unprecedented. Only 19 touchdowns and no rushing touchdowns, I don't think, for him, but 5 total interceptions. And Justin Herbert, which I am not surprised at all because he's on all my fantasy teams, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The Chargers have 3 interceptions the entire season. So just some random observations.
That Jim Harbaugh, man.
It's almost like he knows how to coach football. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. So let's go check out the Tennessean. Go check out all that good stuff right there. You can follow him on Twitter at Nick Suss. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages are great sponsors. Quickly here, Gunnar Stockton is now your starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. And if they're going to win a 3rd championship under Kirby Smart, is going to be the backup that does it, which is just fantastically storybook type of stuff. Let me ask you first question. Why is it so hipster trendy to pick the Notre Dame Fighting Irish before the news of Gunnar Stockton officially taking over to win this game? Like, I know Notre Dame's good and I know Georgia's not great, but like relative to Georgia standards.
Sure. I'm in an uncomfortable position here because I have spent the last 8 weeks telling anyone who will listen, hey, Notre Dame's better than you think they are. That's a really good Notre Dame team. Hey, don't underestimate Notre Dame. That's a really good team. And now the overcorrection is happening and too many people are on my side and I don't feel good about it. It's like, I saw his name in the comments, so I'll bring it up. I was huge on Mac Jones before he had his big season at Alabama. And I was like, guys, you're underestimating this. I know he's not Tua, but he's going to have a really good year. And then everybody kind of just like came on my side. I'm like, whoa, I don't think he's that good. And the same thing happened to me with Carson Beck, where last year I was telling everybody, hey, Carson Beck's a really good player. I think he's going to get some like Heisman buzz in 24. He might get some first round buzz in 24. Trust me, he's going to be good. And then everybody's like, QB1. I'm like, whoa, I never said that. I just said he's really good. I feel that way about Notre Dame. I think they are really good. I think this is a team that should and almost certainly will keep things close against Georgia. But my big question about this game is, did Gunnar Stockton come to Athens to play school? Because the last time a backup quarterback had to make his first start at this point in the season, he didn't come there to play school, and it was really impressive.
Honestly, he was Jameis, and I said this on another show this week. Ironic that Cardell Jones and Jameis Winston also played in the same exact bracket in the same tournament in the college football playoff, and that they sound like he was talking like Jameis before Jameis was talking like Jameis. Cardell Jones, that's one of the greatest quotes of all time. I was there for that game, the Alabama-Ohio State game. I was at the Sugar Bowl. I covered that game. It was crazy.
And I don't think Georgia has an Ezekiel Elliott on its roster, and that's going to be a major difference, is that Gunnar Stockton doesn't have an unstoppable person who he can hand the ball off to. But
or Michael Thomas.
Yeah, that Ohio State team, quite talented. But I do think that the way that Georgia plays strategically and the way that Notre Dame plays strategically do align in a way that could make this a whoever has the ball last is going to win it or lose it kind of game. And those are the most fun games to watch. And just for posterity's sake, I will come out and say the thing that I've been saying to everybody these last 6 or so days since the first round of the playoff happened. As long as Texas and Penn State knock the snot out of Arizona State and Boise State, I will not complain about the playoff format for a full year. Because if I have
you'll get 4 teams that are deserving in the Final Four.
If I get what I want, the playoff did its job. If I don't get what I want, I'm gonna raise hell.
It's all about you.
It's about me. So I'm not gonna complain if I get what I want.
So this analogy of the Notre Dame, the Cardell Jones analogy is interesting because Notre Dame actually is the Ohio State in the analogy, because Alabama was the defending sort of like big bad team on the block, and they were sort of the big machine, and Georgia's now the big machine, and Ohio State was the team that hadn't broken through in 12 years to beat an SEC or Southern Power. Notre Dame's the team in 30 years hasn't broken through and beaten a Southern Power. So there's a bit of a flaw in the analogy there, but if you're going to continue, they've got a Von Bell in Malachi Starks. I don't know if they've got a Marshawn Lattimore, but they probably do on the outside. I think they have got a couple Darren Lees in the middle in there. Yeah. And they certainly have a Joey Bosa and Michael Williams. So like they've got, and Carter, like they got dudes that match up with that Ohio State talent roster. I just don't know about the offense. Here's the thing. This to me, I'm with you. I like the idea and it's a concept of a plan, Nick. I think the concept of the plan for Notre Dame is interesting, that they're talented. They have the better quarterback. Marcus Freeman is sort of about upside and like love the job he's done. at Notre Dame. They're physical. They've got some athletes that are young. Like they've recruited very well in the last 2 seasons. I don't know if those are the guys that are making all the plays outside of like Love at running back and Young at pass rush, Bryant Young's son. But I just can't buy into them finishing the deal until I see it. I want to agree with everybody. Man, this is a very good Notre Dame team. They got their chance. Georgia cannot be killed in these types of situations. Like generally, Georgia Tech, whatever you name it, they've made the comeback and they've played very well because they have sort of the institutional experience that it takes to win these kind of games. And I think it's like we're talking like Alabama LSU 2011 here. Like this is like first one to 13 wins the game. Like it's going to be ugly. So, but I think very physical and very fun to watch. So
and
I'll take Georgia.
Not to be glib about it, but the last 2 times there has been a new postseason format in college football, the champion has been defined by the quarterback that they didn't have. Whether it was Ohio State not having JT Barrett.
Oh, go all the way back to 98?
Tennessee not having Peyton Manning. Every time there is a new playoff format, it is defined by the quarterback the team didn't have.
I'm stealing
and this is a misdirect because I'm talking about Texas. No, I mean, it's interesting. It is just an interesting thing that I'm sure we can talk about a lot more if Georgia wins and a lot more if Texas wins. Because
I think it would be hilarious if Georgia Texas played in a third time and it was Arch versus Gunner.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. Yeah. Not because I want to watch that game and because I've seen it before, but it's just a fantastic storyline. I still think Oregon or Ohio State versus Georgia is probably the best game in the championship setting, but we'll see. Speaking of Texas, a 14-point favorite. What are we doing?
They're better. They're really good. Like I said it last week. I thought that Texas and Clemson would be closer than it was. I thought that was going to be the one close game, and it was for a little bit. But I don't know.
So the fourth, it was the only. There were 55 seconds, Nick, in the first round of the playoff, in which the two teams playing a football game were within one score of each other. 55 seconds total in 4 games, and that was Clemson. So
good,
there you go.
Good for Clemson. This
is Geek Corner Part 3.
I was really impressed by Texas's offense actually being what it should be in that game. And so, I give them a lot of credit for having a clear path to the Final Four. That's not to say Arizona State can't compete. I just don't expect them to.
So this is a good question by Ed. These quarterbacks in the CFP, can they really change their draft status, or is that media stuff? If you're saying the media is suggesting that these quarterbacks can change their draft status, it's one of those where I think it's like a championship game for a team's resume. Like most of the hay's in the barn, and these quarterbacks get evaluated based on so many little nuanced things. Like look at Josh Allen's stats in college, for example. You get evaluated on so much other stuff. But if you're 50-50 on 2 players and one of them goes out and just lights up a defense that's very good in a championship setting and handles the clutch stuff and the pressure and all that stuff, then it might sway somebody. But I don't think it. I think most of the hay's in the barn on these prospects. They don't get evaluated on team success in the playoffs very often, in my opinion.
I think it matters a lot more for the guys with eligibility remaining. Like if you are, to go back to Zeke Elliott, if you're somebody who has that game as a sophomore and gets all the eyes on you heading into your junior season, that matters. So if like Drew Aller goes out and has this outstanding playoff, having already declared that he's coming back, that really sets him up for next year.
Okay.
Whereas if Riley Leonard has a great run, Riley Leonard is Riley Leonard. He's just, But isn't that like that still doesn't affect it? Like Rand Carthon is looking at quarterbacks, let's say. Drew Aller has a great playoff. Like he's still going to be evaluated on his entire body of work. Agreed.
Like he's still going to be evaluated based on interviews and medical examinations and all this other stuff. It's not going to be like, oh, how'd you play against Georgia in the fourth quarter on 3 drives or whatever. Right. So that's a media. That still might be a media thing.
You're spitting in the face of the myth that is Joe Montana. The only reason he got drafted was that one comeback. And that's why he became the greatest quarterback in NFL history.
Well, one guy, okay? One guy. Back when we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Stoney and JT grinding over tape on Christmas Day, okay? All right. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. I don't think Boise has a chance. Unfortunately, I would love to see it because it would be a fantastic story for those of us in the South who think James Franklin is okay. I think it's a great story. I'm going to say Oregon and Ohio State. Don't ask me because I don't care. I don't have a prediction. I just want to see them do it again and play to the final possession again and play a great game. And honestly, they might be the two best teams in the country. So there's another problem with the system there, and the problem with the playoff and the structure there. Those might be the two best teams. So otherwise, all right, go to Tennessean. Check out Nick's work. We'll talk about what Denard Wilson had to say next week. How about that?
Sure. Let's do that.
Otherwise, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa, the Festivus for the rest of us, the airing of grievances, the feats of strength. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday out there. Take a deep breath. Got a couple games left for you Titans fans. Lots of college football left. And then, of course, we're into draft season. So otherwise, stay tuned at Nick Suss, Tennessean, Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Peace and love, everybody. Have a great one. We will talk to you guys next time.